Announced as part of a recent PlayStation Direct, Concord was revealed as a CG trailer showing off its world and characters. But this weekend in fact, we have a beta on our hands, showing off 4 maps, all running on Unreal Engine 5, and we thought it'd be worth taking a quick look at PlayStation 5 and PC to show how it's shaping up. So to kind of teamwork this one, I'm linking up with my good friend and colleague, John Linneman. How's it going?
Yes, hello Tom. It's Concord time, as I like to call it. Concord is the actual name. Yes, we did discuss this game when it was revealed, and they showed some of that early gameplay footage and sort of gave an idea of what they're trying to do here. I wasn't exactly too keen on what was shown, but I gave it a fair shake, and I came away saying this seems okay. And there's some nice stuff going on with the tech, so let's get into it.
So I think the top line is that the game looks great. It looks, really robust, solid. We know the inspiration. We know it's kind of an Overwatch style game, and it's got Unreal Engine 5 as the tech underpinning it. I suppose the first question is, were there any visual highlights to you playing it on PS5 first and PC?
Yes, so I looked at the game on both platforms. It is obviously a Sony game, so it is designed to target both, and I think straight away, so you mentioned it's Unreal Engine 5, right? And
right.
They do not seem to take advantage of any of the major features that make Unreal Engine 5, right? So there's no nanite here, no lumen or anything like that, but that doesn't mean what we have here isn't an attractive looking game. I actually think they've done a really surprisingly good job with the overall look of the game. So it's a very colorful game, similar to Overwatch, but the materials work is miles beyond that. It actually has like some of the realism of physically based materials, but yet it looks stylized at the same time. So that oil rig looking map especially, I really liked what they did there, just like the uses of sort of bold, vibrant colors that still look like realistic metal surfaces. It's like it's a perfect kind of blend there. And, love or hate the characters, they're all very well modeled, well animated. The weapon models themselves look excellent, I would say. And on top of that, they have motion blur in there, but it's only applied to weapons and characters, which I think would make a lot of people happy, so you don't get blurry camera movement when playing it. I spent most of my time on the PC, I will say. And we'll talk in more detail about what that actually entails for PC users shortly. But I guess, the first impressions were fine. I actually tend to like playing these types of shooters when they're in beta because I don't really have time to master it. And when everybody's on this initial level playing field, it's good fun because you can actually get a lot of kills and quite easily.
Totally. Yeah, I'm in the same boat.
But, after a couple months, if people have been playing it hardcore, if such people end up existing, who knows, it'll be tough to get back into it, I'm sure.
We've all been there.
Exactly.
Like with Call of Duty, even the Last of Us multiplayer back in the day. Can't get back into that now. It's only the hardcore.
Too late. Unless you're like well, it's not too late. If you're really dedicated into it and want to keep playing it, then you can have a great time. So
the presentation of this game is a league beyond what we're seeing in Overwatch, which, to be fair, is like a 2016 game, right? It's
originally,
and then Overwatch 2 is like 2023, but that still kind of is essentially a soft reboot of that game in terms of tech. So, this feels like a proper next generation take on that idea, that experience, but it's kind of a shame that we're not really getting the best out of UE5 in terms of like the cutting edge features, at least from what we're seeing so far. With that being said, and I'm looking at the footage here going over, some of the character designs are superb. Like, it's the same idea, character-based 5v5 shooter, but they've really gone to town on the animations, and in terms of facial capture, they can go a lot further than Overwatch did with its kind of stylized, cartoony aesthetic. You've got like proper human detail in the way, characters' eyes move and, the way they talk to each other in that opening cutscene. It definitely feels like a good format for a game like this, where the characters are such a big part of the appeal, and it does seem like they're setting themselves up for a kind of narrative, where you boot up the game every week and there'll be a different cutscene. So that was very impressive. I think it's obviously very Guardians of the Galaxy. Also, once you've selected your character, the fact it goes into a level seamlessly with that ship flying through the clouds and landing without, I think, a loading screen in sight. There might be some small bit, but it pretty much goes from menu, character selection, and then right into the gameplay, which is quite a decent way to do it.
So let's talk a little bit. I want to talk about my PC experience first of all,
sure.
in terms of general performance. And it actually starts with those loading screens. And it seems like a small thing, but loading in an Unreal game on PC is definitely a place where you usually see sort of stutters and hiccups.
Right.
And it's not really a big deal because you're not playing the game, right? But if you can do that without any sort of hiccup, skipping, or whatever, it leads to a more polished feeling product. And that's what they have achieved here. It actually, I was surprised at how smooth and seamless all of that stuff was. It really works great. So that is something to compliment them on. Once you get in game, then I found that it does so obviously. Look, first, let's share our PC specs. So obviously, again, 12900K PC still with the 4090 installed. So still pretty high end, I'd say. And then Tom, you're running a 4080, I believe, with which CPU?
R7 5700X, RTX 4080. Yeah, no hitches here either. Like very, very smooth.
Okay, so I guess the first thing to note is I pretty much instantly noticed that the game seemed to be bottlenecked by the CPU I'm using. And without frame generation, which is a supported feature, I was not able to get to 120 FPS, which is where I would like to play it.
Yeah, same here.
It supports DLSS, DLAA, FSR2, and a DLSS frame generation, plus TSR, Epic's TSR, which actually looks fantastic in this case. And all that stuff can be customized. Frame generation, I think, is very, very important to a game like this. And I'm constantly surprised by how competent that feature's become. Like there's barely any perceptible hit to image quality, and the responsiveness remains high, yet it looks completely smooth. So I was able to hit 120 frames per second without issue. But as is often the case with that, if you want VSync, which I do, you need to enable that outside of the game. I really don't think frame gen or anything looks good with screen tearing in action myself, but if you want the fastest input response, then I guess it's nice the options there. Everything else though, I mean, you can kind of just like max out the visuals, and most of the settings didn't really seem to have any impact on performance at this point, at least on this system, right?
It's just true. Even on the 4080, I had pretty much maxed ultra presets. I had 4K as the output resolution, native resolution in fact, and I didn't even need to rely on any frame generation tech to kind of get it to a decent level for a VR display, I guess. But well, it's about between, let's say, 70 and 90 FPS most of the time, sometimes spiking to 100, which is okay. And then you add frame gen and you get, as you say there, over the line to 120. So in terms of GPU utilization, we're barely hitting 100% here, which is very telling. It does make me think, oh man, I wish this kind of pushed a little bit harder. You know, there was something for the ultra high-end setup, but it still looks great and it's very performant. And being a PlayStation 5 game and not a PS4 game, it seems to be really targeting PS5, and you're getting a solid 60 there as well. So no surprise, PC kind of scales up pretty well.
Right. So what about the PlayStation 5's resolution metrics? I think it was coming in around 1440p.
Yeah, 1440p, flat 1440p from what I can see. So sky shot, look up and take a pixel count, and it's 1440 there. And even during gameplay, it doesn't seem to deviate from that. So yeah, it's 1440 is about the minimum I'd really hope for in most cases from a current gen game. It's kind of the threshold for me where I start to see if it's a bit lower, then I start to feel like I'm being cheated out of a good image quality. But yeah, it's great, solid. I'm happy with that, and the performance is solid. The only thing I do wonder is if they could have pushed to 120 hertz mode with some drop in resolution. There's no 120 hertz support here.
If you think about it, Tom, though, I mean, on PC, it seems to be somewhat CPU limited still, which is often true with Unreal. So even getting to 120 was difficult on a higher end PC. So I feel like it would probably be rather challenging to get there on PS5. One disappointing thing is I noticed on PC, at least for sure, actually I didn't confirm this on PlayStation 5, but HDR does not seem to be supported. There were no settings for HDR when exploring the options menu, which is kind of a bummer considering the vibrant palette. I didn't actually measure anything, so it's possible that they've just implemented some sort of stock HDR presentation with no configuration, but you get none of the highlights or dynamic range you would expect from a proper HDR presentation. It just looks like it's SDR within an HDR container when you switch your PC into HDR mode. So that was kind of a bummer there. But again, it is also it's a competitive game, and I think those types of things are usually less important, but it would still be a nice addition.
Yeah, and it's also, we're in beta territory. They opened up saying, there'll be a few bugs and issues. I was going to say it's coming out on the 23rd of August as well, so really not too long till we see the final product.
I want to compliment, despite not using sort of the real-time lighting system like Lumen, the way they've baked out the indirect lighting here is actually quite attractive. There's one map where there's these orange cloth banners or tents hung above the entire map, right? They're kind of strung up there, and the sunshine piercing through the orange cloth, sort of bouncing around, creating that orange area beneath them is really cool looking, I think, because it's this kind of sunny glow that feels very appealing.
The shadow work as well, largely baked in terms of the environments. So you get this very diffused look across the sides of walls, but then you look up and you realize those flags are actually moving. So you're that's kind of the trick they're using there. But all that must help with performance, I'm sure.
So, but I guess the one interesting thing to finish with is as we're seeing, when you say, oh, this is an Unreal Engine 5 game, I think we've reached this point where, that is the current version of Unreal. But it does not indicate using Lumen or Nanite or anything like that.
It's true.
And
yeah.
I think we've actually seen by now, there's been a fair few games shipping like this where they do not take advantage of those very expensive features. And I guess when that was first revealed, I expected to see a little bit more of that, but it seems like the console's getting there with acceptable image quality and performance does seem to be quite challenging.
Yeah, that is... I take a big breath when I hear Nanite and Lumen is coming, especially on console, because we've seen it a couple of times now with Lords of the Fallen and Immortals of Avium and a few others, where it's okay, they've got this cool tech, but what's the crutch to get it there? And in almost every circumstance, it's been, let's go with FSR or another upscaling technique, and let's drop the native res to something abysmally low. So I'm kind of glad that we're just getting a straight UE5 game, which looks great and is kind of setting up nicely to be, I don't know, it might be a hit. What do you reckon? You think it'll do well?
I think it's going to be hugely challenging for them. I think this sort of game kind of, unfortunately, needs to be free to play. I think the reaction to the initial reveal was not that positive. This sort of beta reaction, though, has been decidedly more so. But I think once you tag the full price tag on top of it, I think it's going to be difficult to get players in this game, which makes me wonder, is there going to be a point where they just swap it over to a free-to-play model? And what would that look like? I mean, Overwatch was not free-to-play, but Overwatch 2 is, if I recall.
Yeah, that was a big lesson learned for Blizzard, and I think they're thriving on that.
I mean, maybe it seems like the numbers have improved a lot, but it felt like Overwatch was extremely popular, but then the free-to-play Overwatch 2, it struggled initially. I think it's doing very well now, from what I've heard. But I feel like the market has changed, and just putting out this sort of hero shooter type of thing in a package just like this, and then asking full price or whatever they're asking for it, it's not free to play. I think it's going to be a tough sell to a lot of people.
Yeah.
And I'm kind of curious to see how this turns out for them.
Yeah, well, time will tell. Well, I guess that'll do it, though, unless you've got anything else to add. I mean, I had a great time with the beta, I will say, as a kind of closer, but, it was only 4 maps in the end.
I had an okay time. It was just a hero shooter, and it's a nice looking one, but it's also not exactly my type of thing. And I'm actually more curious to see what players of these types of games genuinely think when it arrives, and if there'll be any sort of pickup, because maybe there will be. Helldivers 2 kind of came out of nowhere, but that one was doing something unique. I mean, it was doing Helldivers 1, but with a new camera perspective, but there's not that many games quite like that. This one, however, feels very much like this type of hero shooter. So we'll find out soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, on that note, thanks for answering all the questions, John. And I guess we'll see on August 23rd what's going to happen with this.
Sounds good.
Right, that'll do it for today. If you did enjoy this video, feel free to like or subscribe, and don't forget to hit that bell for instant notifications as any new video lands. To get a high quality version of this video and many more, check out our Patreon at digitalfoundry.net, and to get in touch with myself or John, you know where to find us. But from the both of us, thanks for watching.